Hey all, welcome back. So recently I picked up, the bike that this wheel is from. It's an absolute mess. The frame is pretty much just going to be a display piece because it's so bad, but it's actually got some nice components on it. One of these being the wheel set. It's got a campy rear wheel with a rigid rim and a Mavic front wheel. But on the rear here, it's got two spokes that are snapped. Now, when you're out on a ride and the spoke snaps, it's not too much of a trouble if you've got a lot of spokes like this. This is a 36L rim, I believe. So it's not too much of a trouble. You can just get away with winding the spokes around each other just to secure them while you ride home. It will obviously lose a bit of tension, and it might damage the rim slightly, depending on how bad of a wobble it's got. But you can generally get home or get to a safe place where you can pick up a ride. It's happened to me before when I've been riding home, but unfortunately for me it was on a more modern bike. It was on my old carbon road bike, and that had rims with a low spoke count with aero spokes, and losing just one spoke really kind of threw the rim out of alignment, so I decided to call it there and get a lift rather than ride on because I didn't want to cause any damage. But anyway, say your spokes are snapped, it's fairly easy to replace them. It shouldn't be too much trouble. If they go on the drive side, you're going to have to take this cassette off. So for that you will need your tool, you'll need your chain whip, and you will need your spanner, which I didn't bring in with me. But as this cassette is already loose, I can just take that off. If they're on the non-drive side, which mine are, you don't need to remove any tools or anything off the hub. You can access them straight away. It might be a little difficult if you're feeding them through because of the cassette, but you might be able to do it. It's best to take the cassette off either way, and it makes it just life a bit easier. You're obviously going to have to take the tyre off, and you're obviously going to have to take the rim tape off to get to the spokes. Now when you're dealing with the spokes, you're going to need your spoke tool. I just use this one. It's just a cheap one, just a cheap Cyclo Tools one. And when you are tightening or loosening the spokes, you're going to need to know which direction to turn them in. If you're going to do them from this side of the rim, the exposed side, then when you put the tool in place, like so, just slips over the top. Make sure you get the right size. This is probably the wrong size. 3.25, there we go. So you get a nice snug fit. If you were to turn the spoke clockwise, which you would normally think would be doing it up, you're actually loosening it. So if I was to turn that way, I'd be loosening the spoke tension. However, if I turn it anti-clockwise on this side, I'm tightening the spoke. If you tighten the spoke, it will pull the rim towards that side. If you loosen the spoke, it will allow it to go more over to the opposite side. If you do want to, and if you've got the right tools for it, you can do all the tensioning from inside the rim, because the spoke head will have a little slot on it for a screwdriver. And to do that, it's just the normal way. So if you're going to be tightening the spoke, it's clockwise. If you're going to be loosening the spoke, it's anti-clockwise. I should say you don't need this stand or anything like this to do this job. You can just do it in a frame. It's not too much trouble at all to do it just in your frame. But I picked this one up cheap off eBay. It's one someone put together themselves, their own design, and it works quite well. So I'm just going to take this cassette off, just so I can have a bit more access. Normally you would put your tool in and wrap your spoke, your chain tool around it so you can hold it in place while you undo this, but mine's loose anyway, so I can just hold it and undo it. Now the broken spokes, where are they? Here. They will just pop out the rim once you've taken off the tyre and the tube. And the rim tape, of course. The ones on the hub, which here is one, you can pay attention to which way the spoke is coming out of the hub. So this one is starting from the back and coming out. So you can just feed that back through and around. And this one had been wrapped around the axle itself to stop it flopping around. Now I see the one here. Here's the other one. So that is just going to come out as well. The spokes will always go in the pattern, so like coming from inside the hub out and outside the hub in. They'll always follow that pattern going round. So these are your broken spokes. They've snapped in the centre. The ones for me snapped, where did they snap? I believe they snapped at the top near the nipple. They were aero spokes, so they had like a fat aero body rather than this just normal standard gauge spoke. So yeah, I'm not sure why these would have snapped in the middle. It's probably at a crossover point where the spokes are laced. So you need to measure them. That's going to be quite difficult with the spokes all bent up like this. So what you can do is take one extra spoke out of the rim, or just go online and Google it. Okay, so this this wobbly thing here is actually the spoke that I've just took out. So I'm going to try and measure this as best I can. Okay, so I've got this ruler and I've just cut out the end section here so it starts from 0 rather than starting from an open space like that. And I'm just going to hook the spoke over the end so it's sitting right in that bend, right in that neck, and I'm going to measure all the way to the end. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay, so you can see when it's hooked over, I'm holding it tight, I've gone all the way up to the end. I've got a spoke that measures pretty much 284 millimeters. So that's what I'm going to need, that's what I'm going to need to get. And you can also measure the spoke thickness. We've got a 1.6 mil spoke. There we go. And you can translate that into the gauge thickness of the wire. So 284, 1.6 mil. You can find the right spoke. You can find them on eBay. You can find them at your local bike shop. Find them on the internet. There's lots of places where you can get new spokes from. Okay, so I've got my new spoke, or spokes, sorry, and I've got some new nipples. 284mm spokes, exactly the same. They are slightly thicker. These are the new nipples that I've got with it, and that is the old nipple. They're slightly shorter, so I can actually still use the old nipples. I want to make sure everything's as close to the same as possible. Okay, so now it comes to fitting the spoke. On the hub, you can see the alternating pattern of where the spokes go. So here, can we see that? Yeah, you can see the hole. You can see the hole here where the spoke's missing, and the ones either side are starting from the back of the hub, coming out, and then going to the right. This one that I've got to feed in has got to come from the outside of the hub in, and then it's got to feed to the left. So that is just going to go through. And the awkward thing about this is you have to try and bend, oh you can't see it, bend the spoke up a little bit so you can feed it out and through a space which is going to be convenient for you to work the spoke into place. There we go. So I've just fed it out between a good spot on the other side, and then I can just push it through. Now new spokes, they're going to be a little bit difficult because they are, well, straight. They might have to be bent into place slightly. When it comes around the flange here, they're going to want to bend out more than they should, and you want to keep them as tight to this flange as possible. So if I zoom out a bit, okay, we've got, this is the spoke here, and we've got a specific pattern to follow. So these spokes that go through from the outside inside have to go to the left, and they have to go underneath. If you look at the others, they cross one spoke here on the underneath, across two spoke here, second spoke on the underside, and they have to come over the top of this spoke to go to the hole. So you need to pay attention to that. That's your lacing pattern. So that's a 3-cross lace. Ow. So you just got to feed that round. There we go. So I've gone under, over, and then I get to the hole. Okay, so we've got some nice, I say nice, they're kind of annoying to use. We've got some deep section rims here, where the spokes are recessed right down into it. If this was an old school, like just normal box section rim, you'd have the spokes on the top here, the nipple just sitting on the top, and it would be dead easy to get to. Unfortunately, this here is the hole I need to get to, and just simply dropping a spoke in there is not going to work. So what I've found out is if you get the nipple, just get your old spoke and just screw it in ever so slightly, just in the top so you can hold it. Then you can pop the nipple through the hole and work it into place. Okay, so we've crossed the spoke in the correct pattern. We've got it here. We need to feed it into this hole here, but we also need to put this nipple through. So I'm going to pop the nipple through and try and line up the spoke, and we need to thread it in. So I'm just going to get my tool and just start turning it on. There we go, that's got. If you have a screwdriver, you can obviously do this from the other side, but with the spoke, with the nipple being dropped into the rim, I don't really want to use a screwdriver. Then I can just unscrew that spoke from the other side and it's all in place. So I'm just going to do that up hand tight, let's say. There we go, so it pulls the spoke straight. Okay, there we go. So I'm starting to feel a bit of resistance on that now. Okay, so that's the spoke that I've just installed. Alrighty then, so I mean that's 2 spokes back in place. That will strengthen the wheel back to kind of how it will be. We just need to check the alignment of the rim. When you loosen or tighten a spoke, you're going to pull the rim in different directions. So when a spoke snaps, if it snaps on this non-drive side, it will pull the rim back over to the drive side slightly. When it's, like I said, when it's got a lot of spokes like this, it's not too much of an effect, but you will get a bit of brake rubbing. It's okay to kind of get home as long as you're not too far. So we need to check now the alignment of the rim. You don't need a stand like this, like I said. You can just pop it in a bike frame. But having a stand like this, having a homemade one or a park one or whichever, is a bit easier. It's going to be kind of hard to do on this one because I need to do the axle because it's a bit loose, but we're gonna check it anyway. Okay, so when you're working on these stands, this one will only really do a lateral movement, a side-to-side movement. Proper professional ones, you can get a bit of a bump in a rim. So if you've tightened the section too much, it will pull the rim in that way, like straight towards the hub. Or you might have a raised section, so it will cause a bit of a bump in it. I can somewhat work it out with this, but I honestly believe that sort of thing is best left to the professionals. I've taken a few sets of rims to a bike shop just to completely get done, but this is just a home fix, and it will get the bike riding again. So I'm just going to move these arms back into place. What you can do if you're doing it on the bike itself is just flip the bike over, stick it back into the rear dropouts or the front dropouts if it's the front wheel, and instead of using sort of arms like this, you can use a cable tie or something similar. Just cable tie just tie a cable tie to the seat stays, snip it off at a certain point, like just as close to the rim as possible, and then when you spin the rim round, which I will do in a second, you can see how far out or which sections are rubbing on the cable tie. So if I just get this close, there we go, it's almost touching, but I want to see if there's any areas that are wobbling. So if we start to spin it, it's actually not too bad, you know. There's a slight pull away. I don't know how that's going to be looking on the... It's actually not too bad. You can see how it wobbles slightly as it's spinning. So there are some sections that are popping away or towards this. Oh, that was one there. Just there. Problem is, look, the axle in this hub is so worn, so it's kind of difficult for me to say, because the axle is loose on this, I can pull the rim over. Say at this point here, the rim had gone out like so. In this specific spot, if it was, well, as it was turning around, if it was more about here and then it got to this spot and went out, what I would do in this instance is I would note that the spoke closest is on the drive side, is on the left hand side here. Now that to me would say that this spoke is either too tight or the spokes either side of it are too loose. What I would start with doing is doing the ones either side of that. So to correct this, I would be tightening the ones either side just an eighth of a turn. So from this side, if I'm going to be working from inside the rim, I would be turning each of these spokes on this side, say an eighth of a turn, a quarter of a turn, anti-clockwise to tighten them, and then I would see how that affects the rim. So if it pulled it over and corrected it. I would also, if that didn't work, just loosen up the spoke on the drive side, sort of a quarter, an eighth of a turn, just to see how it affected it. And I'd just go around that. I'd always work from the ones either side of the affected area first, just to see how it affected it. But you don't want to do any big sets of turns. You don't want to be cranking that spoke right up. There are also tools that you can get specific spoke tensions. I have not looked into that yet, so I couldn't comment on how they work. But you can just feel around. You can feel if there's any spokes that are super loose just by squeezing them together at the point where they cross. They should not be super loose. The ones on the drive side are always going to be a slight bit tighter than the non-drive side, but yeah, we can work around this. So if you want as well, you could also use the brake caliper and pads itself to see where the rim is wobbling. So that's just a simple home fix of replacing a spoke. So hope that little video was useful. Just as an update, the projects that I'm working on at the moment have been unfortunately delayed. The rock hopper, I have everything for it. It is powder coated, it is waiting to go, but there is one vital part that is missing, and that is the finishing part of the decals. So that is delayed. A company in the UK that does make them wouldn't reply to any emails, so I'm not sure if they're still in business. So I had to get them from the States, and they're not going to arrive until mid-April. So that has really put a downer on that. So rock hopper is delayed until those decals arrive, and the path racer that I'm building, the first video on that, because it's going to be a two-parter, is also delayed because I need some pump pegs welded on before it's painted or brazed on, whichever. So I've got two builds, two of my special kind of specific builds that are just delayed. I've got other things to work on, so don't worry about that. But anyway, back to this. Hope this was useful. Hope you just enjoyed this little video, and I hope it will help someone just do a little home fix on a snapped spoke. Yeah, give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down if you didn't like it. But if you didn't like it, can you just leave a comment and explain why, so I know where to improve. If I missed any information, it really helps. And yeah, subscribe for more. See you in the next video.